Thank you for tuning in to Koppen with Comic. I'm Brian Koppen, and we're here with comic Laurel Bacon Cummings. Laurel Bacon Cummings, how the hell are you?
Hey, Brian, I'm good. How are
Oh,
you?
good. Oh, good. Well, I'm doing great, and it's so nice for you to come on because one of the things that, I mean, it looks like you got the great guests. You got Mark Norman on there, you got Sarah Cooper on there. You have Laurel's Little Show. Tell me about that.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I like comedy podcasts, but I really don't have 3 hours to listen to a podcast. It just kind of bugs me how long they are, right? So I thought I'd start one because I do want to learn things from comics that are more successful than me or cool directors and, just artists that I respect and look up to. Um, so I thought I'd start a show where I talk to people I find interesting in and try to learn something from them in 10 minutes or less.
Yeah, they're short. That's so sweet. So that's kind of the selling point, and it probably makes it even easier to get people on there because they don't have to spare 3 hours.
Well, we talked for a while and then I cut down to the good part.
Ah, okay. And so, yeah, what are you finding with the good parts? What do they all have in common? Like, is it insight on a particular comedy issue or just something, about their life that's interesting to you?
You know, I've only been doing it for a month and I'm really kind of blown away by how open people are and
Yeah.
how earnest they are in sharing things. I'm learning a lot about just certain stepping stones in comedy. A lot of people talk about just for laughs and their first late night set. But then also I'm learning how different comics and artists can be in real life and off stage than their on stage persona, which I guess I should know because I'm not nearly as bawdy as I am on stage, but it's nice to be reminded of that.
So you are body on stage, but in real life, you are not.
I am not. No,
Okay.
I'm excruciatingly well behaved.
Okay. And so kind of why did that take, why did your persona kind of take that direction on stage, do you think? Is that just what people were laughing at? They were laughing at your body stuff a little bit more than the tamed stuff?
I think I think it started probably as a defense mechanism because I was a comedy writer for years in New York. My first job I was a writer assistant at SNL, and then I worked at Fallon before he had the Tonight Show, and so I always just wanted to be in the writer's room. I
Yeah.
lived in LA. I wrote a pilot with a very funny actress named Abby Elliott. Anyway, so when I came back, I figured I got to start just saying these jokes myself. And I was just so nervous. So I think I probably was overcompensating for that by talking about sex and drugs and all the kind of stuff that little blonde girls aren't supposed to talk about.
Yeah.
And then it was working. So there's a freedom to being on stage. You can say whatever you want. It doesn't feel real. It's like being in a blackout.
Yeah. And so, like, are you drawing the right people to you? Like, are they thinking like are they just assuming you're like that in real life?
I mean, that's funny you say that. Yeah, I feel like a lot of people take things a little bit too literally, but I mean, uh, that's I think a lot of people suffer from that consequence of performing.
Yeah, they're like, oh man, I'm gonna party with Laurel Bacon Cummings, man. It's gonna be fucking lit.
I mean, if they pay attention, they wouldn't think that though, because I'm sober and I talk about that on stage because people kept buying me drinks or paying me in shots and stuff, and I was like, please, like I would prefer money.
Yeah, yeah. So what, I talk about sobriety on here sometimes with certain
Huh?
guests, and it's really interesting to me. Like, can you say at what point in your comedy journey did you kind of hit the sobriety button?
For sure. Yeah, I was 27. I had moved to LA. I had a lot of cool opportunities. Just as a comedy writer, I wasn't performing yet then. And honestly, I mean, my drinking started to get in the way of my career because I would be too hungover to write, and I wasn't really getting anything done.
Uh,
And I remember the first time I heard a joke I wrote on TV. I was backstage at the Comedy Central studio in LA, and I remember I was hungover and I was on pills, and I remember hearing the joke, and that had been my dream for so long. And I remember thinking, what would this feel like if I could feel something?
Wow.
Yeah. So I just wanted to see what it would be like to have feelings, and now I do, for better or worse.
Wow, for better and worse, probably, right?
Yeah.
Wow. And so, yeah, like, has the quarantine, I guess staying sober is probably something you do pretty actively as, to resist the urge to drink, means to fill up the rest of your life with stuff. Was that a little bit more difficult with the quarantining?
I mean, yeah, it is because I think anyone in recovery will tell you that free time is not your friend, right? Because
Yeah.
free time I used to just fill with, I mean, I love day drinking. Summertime was just one long bender, from
Yeah.
ages like 14 to 27. But that's why I started my show, partially, just to keep me busy, to keep me getting dressed in the morning, to keep me, I'm trying to learn how to edit the programs myself and teaching myself, watching YouTube tutorials and stuff. I mean, it takes all day. It takes hours and hours and hours, which is great
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah. How long are the interviews before they're edited?
About an hour.
An hour. Okay. So, yeah, to edit the hour, it's probably difficult too to trim out all the stuff because there's a lot of funny stuff.
There's a lot of funny stuff. And then also, since I'm a writer first, I like to have some fun with the captions, so I'll hide little jokes in there.
The
So that's
captions are what take forever, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah, I think I had somebody tell me to do that. I'm like, dude, it will not matter in the slightest. It's not going to, it's not going to turn me from my amount of Instagram followers into, a multiple of that such that they're likely to stream it if it has captions. And he was like, yeah, dude, it takes me hours to caption 30 seconds or some shit. And I'm just
oh
like,
yeah,
see, that's exactly why I don't do it.
it when I started, it would probably take me 6 hours to caption 5 minutes, and then now I'm getting a little more comfortable using the program, so a little bit less. But yeah, it's time consuming for sure.
But that's a good thing in your case because then it means no day drinking for Laurel Bacon Cummings.
Yeah, it keeps me on the straight and narrow.
So as far
Um,
as so as far as your guests and things, I mean, it sounds like you aimed a little bit higher than where you're at currently, and their response must have been pretty good because your hit rate. I mean, the guests that you're bringing on, are all pretty studly.
Thank you. Yeah, I back when comedy existed in its previous form, I produced and hosted a show at the Lantern called Free Puppies.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, so thankfully a lot of my headliners were happy to do Laurel's little show,
Oh, good.
and I feel really lucky that, I mean, obviously I don't want people to be sick, but I feel really lucky that we're all in quarantine because everyone's available.
Yeah. Yeah, and it gave me another excuse to reach out to people a second time. It's like they're less likely to come to QED Astoria from Brooklyn, just because it's fucking difficult. But they probably, they're more likely to say, "Yeah, I'll do a remote though." And then I think that's been my experience with it. But it sounds like, I mean, are they going to say no to you? It's like Abby Elliott said yes to Laurel Bacon Cummings. I can't imagine why a comedian would say no.
Thanks, Brian. And how about you? How did you start this show?
Well, I think it was some of the same thing. Like I like how open, I think you said, open and honest, and that's exactly why I did it. I just wanted to. I almost think I had an interaction in my real life where somebody was just so fucking absurd in conversation that I was like, this would never fucking happen if I was talking about this shit with a comedian. Like comedians are open, they're honest, they're looking for a sense of humor, they're not just looking to be right. And so like I was like, fuck man, I'm just gonna start the podcast that I've been thinking about, which is just, having a comic on each short episode
Mm-hmm.
and just attempting to riff with these people. And it turned out to be the case. Yeah, they're open, they're honest, they're fucking hilarious. Like I can't there's nothing more fun than what we do. Wouldn't you agree?
Of course. I mean,
Yeah.
it's the best drug I've ever had.
Well, that's saying a lot. It sounds like you're
Yeah.
a pill
Well,
popper for a second. Yeah.
yeah. No, I mean, I definitely had my fun in my early 20s. I don't feel like I left any stone unturned in terms of, drugs or alcohol.
Right. Yeah, I'm having this. I'm having the problem with the day drinking, etc. It's getting problematic. Like, I don't feel like I'm missing things, but my body is reacting in a certain way that's no longer. It might no longer be tenable at my age. I'm about 40, and so it's starting to fucking get weird, man.
You're 40? You sound much
Yeah.
younger than that.
Well, I think my voice is I don't smoke or anything, so my voice is pretty sweet. Like I used to do argument competitions in law school, and I was just a badass at that.
Oh,
But I
you're a
don't really.
lawyer?
Well, yeah, I'm a former lawyer. Yeah, I was licensed about 10 years ago, so I'm still in the law, but I can't really hold myself out as a lawyer. Um,
What kind of law?
well, currently I do eminent domain law in Illinois. I do that remotely, and so
What's that?
that's just where somebody, if like somebody builds a highway through somebody's fucking property, like where the people who
Uh-uh.
represent the property owner. But but I never really argued to be right. And so that's when I got, when somebody in real life thought, I was trying to win an argument, I'm like, go fuck yourself. I'm not, if you have a problem talking with me, like you have a real problem. Like I can talk with anybody about anything, and here's this person who's trying to make me think that I'm bad at speaking. It's like, no, I'm not bad at speaking. I'm actually very good at speaking.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be right. I just want to fucking have a constructive conversation where both sides are allowed to talk without being accused of, I don't know, being shitty. And so yeah, that's why. And it turned out so perfectly, just because every single comedian is funny, and they're funny in a different way, in a totally unexpected way, and they're just open and honest. And so like there's very few times where I've asked a question and they haven't answered it to the point where I'm like, oh shit. Even today, I was talking about somebody's trigger or something like that, and after the fact I was like, maybe I shouldn't have asked that. So I even asked him after the episode if I had to edit that out, and he said no, it's fine. But it's like, man, if I'm fucking open and if I am this open and honest in general, like I better not take this out of the podcast studio. Like, do you find yourself asking questions of anybody in real life where, um, maybe they're a little bit less open and honest than one of your comedy podcast guests?
Hmm. I would say for sure, because the people that I'm talking to are directors I respect, comics I look up to. I mean, they're artists, right? So
Yeah.
I think artists by definition are have kind of dedicated their life to expressing themselves, whereas uh, most people don't even think about that.
Yeah.
Um, so I think you got it the nail right on the head. But so were you ever a litigator? Because I find that really interesting.
Well, yeah, no, so I write litigation all day long, like even now. So like if you need a legal brief or something, I'm the guy to do it because I'm awesome and fast, and I'm just a fast, confident writer in general. And so I do that, but usually, somebody else goes into court and says the words.
Oh, see,
Yeah,
that's what I
'cause
used to do. I would write jokes and sell them to other people. I just didn't have the nerve.
yeah, so I mean, I think I got up in courts, a couple times, and that was okay. But it's never like what they show on TV. Even argument competitions where 7 judges were interrupting me with questions is the closest I'll ever get to kind of a real
Wait.
TV.
What is an argument competition? Because that
So,
sounds like my parents' divorce.
yeah, so that's just where you get up with a prepared argument. It's 2 teams of 2, and there's up to 7 lawyers and judges up on this on the lawyer in the courtroom. They're up on their little desk there, and they can interrupt you at any time with any question.
Hmm.
So they just pepper you with the weaknesses of your argument, and you have to kind of adapt on the fly. It's probably kind of like comedy where you have to deal with crowd control and hecklers and things like that.
I mean, hopefully it doesn't get to that. But yeah, I see the correlation for sure.
Yeah, and like because you talk with it sounds like some of the questions you're asking these comedians is the steps in comedy, just for laughs and things like that. Like, do you think these steps are going to be any different after coronavirus?
Hmm. Yeah, I think that we're going to have more digital comics emerging, right? People that have been creating content for Comedy Central or TikTok or just on their own, are getting, like, look at Sarah Cooper, who was one
Yeah.
of our first guests. She is completely blowing up. She was on the Tonight Show last night, right? And when I talked to her, I thought it was really interesting that I said, how did you come up with this concept and stuff? And she said the limitations actually pushed her to have to create in a new form that she wouldn't have considered otherwise. Like, I I can't make a shoot, like I can't have actors come over. If I would do a sketch, which I do sketches on the show sometimes too, just to showcase my writing. I'm certainly not an
Okay.
actress. Like, I would
Yeah.
never do it myself. I would certainly get a professional.
But yeah, so that's cool. That limitation did breed the ingenuity it's supposed to.
Yeah, totally. What do you mean when you say someone's triggers?
Oh, we were talking about was it what's her name, Kelly Bachman? She's with Dylan Adler on the Rape Victims Get Horny Too, that show.
Okay.
So we had Dylan Adler on, and so we were talking about sexual assault and trauma and things like that. See, you can
Oh,
talk about the
amazing.
heavy topics with comedians. It's great. But I think then we talked about porn and the lessons about consent that people get from porn. And so
Oh,
then I was talking about, whether or not what kind of porn he watches now, and is there anything that triggers him now that didn't before? And so even after the fact, I was like, that's a, don't answer even in the moment. I was like, don't answer if you don't want to, or we'll edit it out afterwards. And then I even asked him if he wanted it to, and he said no.
wow. That's heavy stuff.
Yeah. So I mean, do you get that heavy on your stuff?
Well, I guess we'll see. You got to listen to the show.
Yeah, you're like, I can totally get this heavy. Or maybe, I guess you're saying you maybe already do. So I'll have to check out every fucking
Yeah.
episode to see if the porn triggers are one of the questions you've asked.
Well, I talked about porn with a comic last night who actually came very close to being a adult performer, but I don't want to give it away. So everybody, just check out the show. I'm submitting it to the Apple Store and Spotify as a pod soon. So people that don't want to look at my caption work can just listen to the audio.
Well, of course they did. You put a lot of time into it.
Yeah, but some people don't like to read.
See, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. It's like I'm putting
Absolutely.
this to get bigger reach, but some people don't want to read the stupid thing. And I mean, to kind of, looks like this thing is linked, Laura's little show is linked at your Twitter account. And right now you're using Laurel B. Cummings as your Twitter account.
Yep, yep.
And you had another one. What's the story behind the other one?
Oh, yeah, my Twitter name used to be the other LC because when I started Twitter, I worked at Jimmy Fallon and Questlove had little nicknames for everyone. He was a very nice guy and he gave every female on set a gift for Valentine's Day, and mine was a tote bag that said LC on it, and I didn't know that was my nickname, but I guess it was. So then everyone started calling me that, and at the time The Hills was very big, so
Yes.
I thought I'm the other Elsie, but it didn't seem that relevant, and so I just switched over to Laurel B. Cummings, and then on Instagram I'm Laurel's Little Show.
But I just love that that one of the final tweets there coincided with the murder hornets. It's like once the murder hornets came, she was like, "Fuck this! I'm going to my other account."
Yeah, it kind of implies that the murder hornets got me, and that was the end of me.
Yeah. Oh, she's fine. Yeah, the other LC is dead, but Laurel B. Cummings is there, and that's when we can see Laurel's little show, and I'm looking at it right now, and you just I see you next to just all these fucking people. Even Emma Willimon or whatever her name is. She's
Emma
huge.
Willman, yeah,
She's huge too.
Schnelly.
Yeah, Usama. Yeah,
Rosebud
Usama was just
Baker's
on late
coming
night.
up. Mary Beth Barone. We got some really cool people. I'm so flat. Oh, I had a wonderful interview with Aaron Lee Card, the director, yesterday.
Okay.
I just love it. I'm so happy that I started doing it, even though it's a absolute mountain of work. The fact that because I also work full time, writing silly things for brands and such for, I do. I write for, I shouldn't say the exact names of the shows, but different TV networks. They have their own social presence as well, and so they often have comedy writers run those. So I'll wake up, I'll edit Laurel's Little Show from like 6 to 9:30, and then do my day job from 10 to 6, and then hopefully stand-up shows at night and have some interviews and stuff. So it's a full day. So I don't know how I'll have time to, leave the apartment once that becomes an option again.
Yeah, and I mean it's so cool, like because you can talk to whoever you want to. It's like, why didn't we do this so much sooner? Like if you can talk to all the comics you look up to or you respect anyway, and directors that you want to talk to. I mean, why didn't we start this sooner?
Totally.
But we stumbled upon it now, and so we're halfway there.
Totally.
Well,
You
we're
said
gonna. Go
Sorry.
ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was going to say, no, it's your show. You lead the way.
Yeah, so yeah, Laurel B. Cummings, we're gonna track all this shit, and you just have the best guests, and we're gonna hear you talking about porn triggers with people who almost became porn stars, and it's it's a little show that can,
I love that. Very nice. Yeah, the tagline I came up with is short interviews with interesting people, but the little show that can is very positive.
Dude, I love that so much. Laurel Bacon Cummings, thank you so much.
Thanks, Brian. Bye.